Amidst rising cost of PMS, federal government doubles down, insists on no return to subsidy or price control. It says we utilize windfall productively. Only members of the 10th Senate are qualified to contest for the office of Senate President in the 11th Senate, as Ray Chamber amends its standing order, effectively barring non-ranking lawmakers from vying. There was a rowdy session at some point in the chambers. Hello and welcome to Politics Today, reaching you live from our global headquarters in the nation's commercial nerve center, Lagos, Nigeria. I'm Jeffrey Uzom. As always, we bring you up to speed with what we've been looking through, say, in the last 24 hours when we were here, and binge through all of them to bring you the biggest highlight as far as Nigerian politics and the polity in general is concerned. But we will start off from outside the country and then come back into the country. The president, as you know, is out of the nation on a three-nation tour. One of his first port of call, is in France, in Paris, where he's met some potential investors, where the Honorable Minister of Finance, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, had said some of the outcome of that conversation between this community of businessmen and investors and high-level officials. And one of the outcome of that conversation was to the effect that if you are thinking that because of what is playing out in the Gulf nation, especially the Strait of Hormuz, where there's a double barricade or blockade, if you will, one by Iran, the other by the United States, that are seeing the price of crude oil surge, although it dropped today to, I think, WTI dropped to less than $100, but I think Brent was still around $100 or so. And so we're seeing the impact in pump price of fuel to a range of 1,300, 400, depending on where you live in Nigeria. Well, if you think all of that is making the government to think again about consumption subsidy, no, they're not going back to it. Mr. Oyedele said there's no going back. In fact, there's no price control. So what exactly is the government going to do to help you buy fuel cheaper? But let's take a listen to Mr. Oyedele.
We're able to give an overview about the progress we are making, about the next areas of focus to deepen the reform and translate the reforms into results. We see also the issues going on in Iran. While that is unfortunate, we think it presents new opportunities for us as the world looks to diversify sources of energy and investing in new markets, as well as ensuring that Nigeria is able to get the optimal outcome from the price regime to be able to mobilize more revenue and spend that productively to address supply side and also ensure that we manage inflation as much as possible.
So what he's simply saying is that, I don't know whether that was captured there. If you're talking about subsidy coming, he said one of the things they presented to them is that what the government will not do is bringing back subsidy. They will not put price control to any of these products. But what they will do is a windfall that is coming from the excess money that is being made because our budget is spec'd around $65 per barrel. Now we're doing 100, so we have some windfall. They will invest it productively. Now, that is a subjective conversation later, not today on the program. So whether the government is investing productively is what we need to engage the government on to know how it plays out. But let's talk a bit of politics now, where the NWC of the APC has waived screening requirement for President Bola Tinubu and deemed him as duly screened in accordance with the constitution of the party for the purpose of participating in the upcoming elections. Now, this decision was made in pursuant to the constitution of the APC to organize and supervise the party's primaries and in special circumstances grant waivers in the best interest of the party. The NWC says the president has received overwhelming endorsement and votes of confidence from critical stakeholders of the party. That includes the Progressive Governors Forum, PGF, the leaders and members of the National Assembly, as well as other organs of the party at the APC National Summit in May 22nd, 2025, and other major statutory events of the party. So it noted that the president, having been duly screened and cleared ahead of the 2022 presidential primaries, requiring his physical appearance before a screening committee at this time, they consider it will be redundant and unnecessary. So in case you want to see video emerging of the president being screened by the NWC, no, that's not going to happen. That's a decision by the NWC of the APC. Let's tell you what played out in the chambers of the National Assembly, especially the upper legislative chamber. The Senate today confirmed Mr. Joseph Olaskomi Tegbe and Ambassador Shola Enikonlaye as the Minister of Federal Republic of Nigeria. The duo were confirmed after the screening at the Committee of the Whole on the floor of the Senate today. President Bola Tinubu had written to the Senate on Tuesday asking them for confirmation or approval of his nominees. During the screening by the Senate, Tegbe, or Mr. Tegbe, now Minister Tegbe, warned that Nigeria's power crisis requires tough and transparent reforms, stressing that there are no quick fixes. Tegbe told lawmakers that the approach to sector or to that power sector has changed. I don't know whether it's a good thing to be nominated for the Ministry of Power, because it looks like it's a very difficult ministry to have success recorded. We've been struggling and range about, we have a 13,000 install capacity, but we do around 3 to 5, maybe maximum 6,000 megawatts because of the many encumbrances within that particular sector. But today we're going to talk politics, what played out in the Senate, as well as some political conversation around the opposition. Now, proceedings in the Senate today were actually disrupted for about 15 minutes. Now, that followed the exchange between Senator Adams Oshomole. It was heated. And the president of the Senate during plenary. The incident began when Senator Akpabio was reading the votes and proceedings from the previous legislative session. While the chamber considered a section relating to the South Africa debate, Senator Oshomole raised a point of order. However, the Senate president overruled him, citing provisions of the Senate standing orders as amended. Now, tension resurfaced when the Senate moved to segment on the recent amendment to the Senate standing rules, and the Edo State senator again attempted to raise a point of order. The situation escalated when the chief whip, Senator Taha Mongono, warned Senator Oshomole to comply with the rules or face disciplinary action. It was a heated. Let's take a listen for a moment.
We should begin to know. People have been in these chambers for 3 years now. We should begin to know the rules of the Senate. I don't want to be accused of executive arrogance. That's why I keep tolerating these things. Please, there's no new senator any longer. Distinguished senator, we shouldn't just go home, fill form, contest election, come here without knowing anything about the rules. Order 20 sub F says that the Senate president shall interpret the rules. I didn't write this. So, please, Senator Oshomole, for the last time, if you become unruly in the Senate, we will use these same rules to take you out of the Senate. So this is the last warning.
Well, one of the senators, who is a principal officer in the Senate, will be joining me in just a moment to tell us exactly what played out as far as this, and also the new rule of the Senate and the power play within that new rule. We're going to look at all of it as well as other issues, but that will be after we bring you our political roundup stories.
The chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Joash Amupiton, is advocating stronger collaboration with the Nigerian police force as preparations gather momentum for the 2027 general elections. Speaking while on a courtesy visit to the Inspector General of Police at the force headquarters in Abuja, Professor Amupiton says the success of the 2027 polls, scheduled for January and February, depends largely on a secure environment and close synergy between the electoral body and security agencies. In his response, the Inspector General of Police, Olatunji Disu, reaffirms the commitment of the force to provide adequate security before, during, and after the elections, with assurances that personnel of the force will remain professional, neutral, and firm in the discharge of their duties. The All Progressives Congress in Adamawa State is set to conduct direct primaries that will produce the party's candidates for the 2027 general elections. The state chairman of the party, Mr. Hamza Madagali, explains this position in Yola, the Adamawa State capital, during the visit of the immediate past national vice chairman of the party for the Northeast, Mr. Salihu Mustafa. According to him, 10 governorship aspirants have obtained their nomination forms and declared their interest to contest for the office of the governor of Adamawa State. Ahead of the 2027 general elections, the consensus governorship candidate of the All Progressives Congress in Nasarawa State, Senator Aliyu Wadada, is expressing optimism that the party will retain the governorship seat in the state. Speaking in Abuja shortly after returning his nomination form, Senator Wadada highlights that the administration of Governor Abdullahi Sule has transformed the state to the admiration of residents. He explained that with the support of critical stakeholders in the state, the All Progressives Congress is on its way to victory come 2027. The immediate past Minister of Power and leading gubernatorial aspirant in 2027 governorship election in Oyo State, Adebayo Adelabu, has met with the state executives of the All Progressives Congress, stating that he is confident of winning and becoming the governor of the state in the 2027 general elections. While addressing Oyo APC state executives at the Okeado APC Secretariat, Mr. Adelabu says the engagement was to formally notify them of his intention to contest, expressing confidence in his chances of securing both the party's ticket and eventual victory. Adelabu assured Oyo APC executives and people of the state that no part of Oyo State will be neglected, promising inclusiveness and tangible benefits for residents of the state. The Working People United, a group of professionals across various sectors, have declared support for the re-election bid of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in 2027. The National Coordinator General of WOPU, Mr. William Akporea, made the declaration at the end of the inaugural meeting of the group's National Working Committee in Abuja. Akporea has said the decision was based on what he described as the impactful policies of the Tinubu administration on members of the group and Nigerians at large.
My chat will be with the politicians in the National Assembly. First, let's begin with the Senate. Senator Onyekatinwe Boyin, he represents the Boyin North Central, is the Deputy Chief Whip of the Senate, joins us from our Abuja studios. Senator, distinguished, thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you so very much for having me.
Let's begin with the persons, like people like us who are not in the chambers, and people who may not be familiar with the rules. I know that what happens in the Senate stays in the Senate. However, plenaries and things that happen in the Senate is what everybody sees. So it's been reported everywhere that the Senate president had a clash with Senator Shomole over some standing rules and orders. What was that all about? 15 minutes of interruption.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity once again. What played out today is someone trying to act outside the rules of the Senate. We have standing rules that regulate our proceedings. And before we can raise point of order, we must get to that level as we begin the daily activities of the Senate. But however, that shouldn't be an issue for discussion. It was so trivial and it had been resolved. I think that my being here this evening is to educate Nigerians, on the amendments we made on the rules of the Senate. And I will begin by citing Section 60 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, which empowers the National Assembly. When I say the National Assembly, I mean the Senate and the House of Representatives, to regulate, our proceedings and procedures. So, and yesterday, being the 5th day of May, 2026, the 10th Senate, in exercise of such constitutional powers, saw reasons to, review further the standing rules of the Senate 2023 as earlier amended. And most of the prominent orders reviewed is Order 1, and of course Order 55, Order 66, and I think Order 94, and of course so many others in the standing rules, all geared towards to reflect the present realities. And as we go on in this discussion, I can tell you the reasons behind those amendments. For example, Order 3, Rule 1, before now, allowed senators-elect to participate in the election of the presiding officers of the National Assembly. Whereas it is an anomaly for a senator-elect who has not taken an oath of office to become a senator to so participate in the election of the presiding officers. So that is why, in the course of this review, we said no, that this Order 3 Rule 1 should be reviewed to read that senators must first and foremost take oath of office and oath of allegiance as prescribed in the relevant schedules of the Constitution, because it's only when you are a senator, confirmed senator, not senator-elect, that you can, start performing your functions, as a senator. And the election of the presiding officers is one of the fundamental duties, of a senator. So that is very, very important, and we had to do that. And we also went further to Order 3, Rule 4, Order 3, Rule 3 and 4. Also made it mandatory that before you are eligible to, start to contest for the office of the presiding officers of the Senate, you must have had a requisite experience of at least 8 years experience, of which the last 4 years must precede the date of such an election, which is aimed at retaining the institutional memory, which is geared towards, pushing down, the agenda of the party, of course, which is the ruling party in the parliament.
The thing is, let me comment. My apologies to you. Yes, I've allowed you to lay a basic background to this because I was coming to that. But since you've jumped into it, for people who are looking at, so the new rule says that you must have, so let's be clear. It must be your second time in the Senate or your third time. I want us to be clear on that. Must it be your second time or your third time in the Senate before you can qualify
minimum of second term, by the implication of Order 3, Rule 3 of the amended rules.
I wanted to be
means 2 years.
Yes. I wanted to be sure of that.
Yes.
So now people, there are so many things that are being argued out there. I'm sure this is the new rule, but people are going to debate about the latitude of this particular rule. Some who have seen this as the 10 senates going on self-preservation and barring other persons from being able to vie for elective position, because you're all senators, you're equal. There's no senator that is more of a senator than the other person. So although Section 60, I agree, says that the Senate has the power to make rule for itself, which is what you've done, isn't that in itself affecting the ability of people to find expression in the aspiration to be whatever they want in the Senate by these rules? So, for instance, I'll give you an example. If somebody has served in the Senate, say, in 1990, maybe 2003, all the way to 2015, and he decides he wants to come back to the Senate right now, he already has maybe 4 years or, no, 8 years or 16 years experience. But because he's not in the 10th Senate, you're now barring the person from contesting for the office of president. Is that fair?
Well, depending on the angle you are viewing it, the rules was not amended to affect a particular person or targeted at a particular person. What we just did, like I said earlier, is to retain the institutional memory, is also to ensure continuity, and also experience matters, because the Senate in 1964 and of course the Senate in 1999 is not the Senate as it stands today. So we needed somebody who is conversant with the recent political development in the parliament, to be able to pilot the affairs of the Senate as the president of the Senate, and of course as the speaker. Of course, for the House of Rep has their own rules. So it is not targeted at anybody. It is aimed at ensuring that experience is there, because we need an experienced person to lead as a Senate president or as a deputy Senate president. That is just the rationale behind that. It is not targeted on anybody. If you look at it,
my apologies.
If you look at it critically, you discover that we have so many senators. We have so many senators who are qualified, to contest, for that position. So our concern is just experience and the institutional memory retainers. That's all.
So people who may be speculating that this is maybe the Senate president, you are very close to him. You're close to the Senate president. Does he want to come back as a Senate president in 2027?
When we get to the bridge, we'll cross it. We are approaching our primary elections. So it's after winning election that we'll talk of the leadership of the next parliament. So we are not doing it to favor a particular person or a particular party. It's just to, for the reasons I've said.
Well, I'll take your reason I've said, but there are certain persons, including governors who are currently serving, who are senators, and who want to come back to the Senate. Maybe they're having their eyes to be principal officers of the Senate, since they'll be seen as ranking members, haven't gotten legislative experience. But with this particular rule, you've automatically, technically, by the sequence of the order of ability to vie for office, cancel them out by insisting on the 10th Senate being, for your words now, institutional memory of the Senate. You've canceled them out in ability to achieve their dream.
I'm not aware of that.
I hope you will be at some point. So let's talk about where you come from, which is the Southeast. One of the biggest conversation politically right now is how the APC will fare in the Southeast and maybe the Northwest. And there are different unique, permutation as to how that is. So let's say President Bola Tinubu wins the election in 2027. That means he runs with Kashim Shettima. That means that we're still going to have President Tinubu from Southwest, and we're going to have Kashim Shettima from the Northeast. The Southeast, for instance, has been agitating to have a strong seat on the table, maybe around the leadership of the National Assembly, either the Senate or the House of Reps. With this rule right now, that possibility, how feasible can it be?
Well, like I said, it's after the election that we can start to talk about who leads the National Assembly. However, Southeast generally are for APC unconditionally. Why do I say so? APC has shown the people of Southeast love in an extraordinary manner. And I give the credit to the father of the nation, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. You will agree with me that in 2023, the people of Southeast didn't vote for PDP, and by implication, didn't vote as we suppose to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. But President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, being a Democrat, being a nationalist, still gave the people of Southeast juicy positions in his administration. Number one is the office of the Honorable Minister of Works, which is the first of its kind from creation for an Igbo man to smell that seat. Outside that, as I'm talking to you, this is the very first time since 1914 that the Southeast is receiving the due attention in terms of infrastructure development. You will agree with me that as a result of the Nigerian Civil War, most of the infrastructure in Southeast were eroded away. And the reconstruction and the rehabilitation program of federal government then didn't get to Southeast, even when Southeast take the huge brunt of that Civil War. But President Tinubu, as I'm talking to you, is rehabilitating most of the major roads in Southeast, which include the Onitsha-Enugu double carriageway, the Enugu-Aba-Port Harcourt carriageway, double carriageway, the Enugu-Abakaliki double carriageway, and the mother of all projects is another road, double lane road, traversing Calabar to Abakaliki, passing my community to Benue, down to Abuja.
Senator,
with all these reasons...
My sincere apologies. I know you're reeling this out. So a straight political question.
Yes.
Do you believe,
yes,
maybe I can predict your answer, but I'll leave it to you, that President Tinubu will win the Southeast in 2027, given how he performed poorly the last time in 2023? And these are your reasons for saying he will win, right?
Well, you should listen, carefully, and with keen interest on the enumeration I made a few minutes ago. You will agree with me that it goes without saying that President Tinubu and other APC candidates will win in Southeast come 2027 general election. The reasons are bound. I've said it here. Igbo people are seeing it. We've taken our position. Even if our son comes to contest, it is very clear that the political permutation, as at present, does not favor an Igbo man to be president of Nigeria. We must tell ourselves the truth, and we can't be deceived all the time. We know the best time to strike to get the #1 seat, and all Nigerians will support us.
So in your view right now, the likes of maybe, say, Peter Obi is not doing his timing properly by trying to unseat President Tinubu by the analogy you gave. Is that what you're saying?
He's coming at the wrong time.
So let's talk about your legislative duty before I let you go. Right now, the pump price of petrol is about 1.3, almost 1.4. I just read at the beginning where the federal government has said anything that has to do with consumption subsidy, forget about it. What we are looking at actually as a country is to see how the windfall can be transformed into productive, can be used productively. Those were the words of the Honorable Minister of Finance. But Nigerians are still reeling on the impact. And that has always been the question of when the macroeconomics look good, a stable currency or strengthening of the naira, all of the reserves that the government quotes, all of the big numbers. But the compounding effect is still far from in between all of this. Nigerians are struggling. There's something I call the egg standard. Egg used to be 15 naira, it's now 250 to say because of the reform the government has said. Do you believe that the National Assembly that you sit in and is a principal officer of is doing enough to protect the interests of Nigerians to be able to have some level of a better quality of life?
Well, thank you so very much for this question. As a leader in this country, I must admit that all is not well. But we must ask our question. All is not well. Did it start today? Will the blame be poured on the present administration? And the answer is no. The problem we are facing today is the failure of past administrations. And I keep saying, and I could not to say, this is the time we have a president who wanted to be president with plans. We now have a president who thinks outside the box. We now have a president with the understanding as to how things work. If you look at his economic policies, yes, I will agree with you, we are not seeing the result fully as to guarantee better lives for average Nigerians. But I must tell you that if the past administrations has taken bold steps to implement some of these economic policies that President Tinubu is boldly implementing today, Nigeria would have been in a better place, than where we are today. But we now have a man, at least we are starting well. For example, let me take you, to the area of infrastructure, our road network. Look at the quality of road the current administration under President Tinubu is doing. Concrete pavement, let me tell you, that can last for 50 to 100 years, meaning that successive government is not going back to repeat such roads, meaning that we have not gotten solution to our road problems in Nigeria.
Senator,
we build roads that can last for 100 years.
My honest and my sincere apology. I know the importance, and I'm sure everybody knows the importance of road. But we're talking about the quality of life of the average Nigerian under the very hard economic situation. You keep mentioning that past administration has not done much. One of those past administrations, sorry, sir. One of those past administrations includes the administration of the APC under Muhammadu Buhari, God rest his soul, that by the assessment of this government almost ran the economy aground. So what are you saying?
Yes, we can take the blame as a party because it was an APC government. But that does not mean that I'm discrediting the government of the former president. But the point I'm trying to let you understand is that we now have a man who is trying to reset, the economy to roll in a proper dimension. And the first step to take is to look at the infrastructure. Just like the ministerial nominee for power today said, the power sector is not just a sector, but but a foundation for productivity. So I believe that road network is #1 foundation for productivity.
All right.
So every government that wants to revive the economy must start with the basic infrastructure, like road, like power. And if you see
all right,
the
Senator.
interview,
Yeah, we're totally out of time.
Nominee for power. Just a minute.
Yeah,
Just a minute.
No,
we're totally out of time. If you watch our interaction,
yes,
it's okay.
My apologies. Keep going. Even the president that said if he doesn't give us power, we should not vote him. Well, we haven't seen the much power that is required, and I'm sure you can agree. But it's an ongoing conversation. Senator Onyekati Nweboye, Deputy Chief Whip, representative Boy North Central. Thank you for coming on the program. I appreciate you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, when we come back after this break, I'll be talking with the chairman of the PDP caucus in the House of Representatives. It looks like the more we feel like, let's close our eyes, I think the crisis in the PDP is over. Boom, it happens again. I'll tell you the latest. Stay with us. Welcome back. My next guest is Honorable Fred Agbedi. He represents the people of Sagbama Ikerema Federal Constituency from Bayelsa State, and he is the chairman of this caucus of the PDP. Honorable, I like the fact that you're smiling. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
It's good to see you.
Viewers, I'm trying to...
Yes, while we're waiting for you to sort all of that out so that we can get the full value of the conversation, I hope you can hear me, sir.
Yeah, so how are you?
I'm very well. I'm very well. So, with the PDP, at some point, I think I think it was on Monday, I had a conversation with Nyeme Mabong, and we felt like with the Supreme Court judgment, this should have been, everybody should have settled this matter once and for all. But it looks like there are more fireworks. Now we have an interim national working committee led by Tamini Turaki, a group this FCT minister has called fraudulent. Those were his words, or some of the things he referred to. And he said a lot of things today in his media parley about what is being done by this other group of the PDP. What do you make of this unending festering crisis?
Yeah, I need some help, please. Yeah, Geoffrey. Just a moment. This.
Oh dear.
Like it pulled off.
Okay, but did you hear my question, sir? All right, so I think he's trying to sort a few things out. So the PDP, it depends on what you're looking at. It's a multiplicity of litigation. Two have ended up in the Supreme Court in favor of the Abdurrahman leadership of the NWC. But the Turaki group is saying, look, there was something that happened in terms of discipline that gives them the premise to be able to take over. Now they formed an interim national working committee. Honorable Agbedi, are you there now?
Yes, I'm here, Jeffrey. And let me quickly tell you that the position you are taking is wrong. It is not as if the Supreme Court gave judgment that stated that the Turaki-led National Executive Committee is out of the way and then another executive committee is in place. That's not the true position. The true position is that, yes, there's been areas of litigation, and by the last Supreme Court judgment, which affirmed largely the appeal court judgment upon which the Turaki faction and both groups went on appeal, because the Turaki SAN group went on appeal, and then there was a cross appeal from the Anyanwu group. And both cases were dismissed. Both appeals were dismissed. It goes to mean that there are no national working committee in the PDP. That was what the judgment meant. And so the BOT had to take over proceedings from that point to ensure that leadership was given to the People's Democratic Party. If you understand the Supreme Court judgment, it goes to mean that the Anyanwu group are not members of the PDP. That's what it meant, because Anyanwu and his co-travelers were suspended on the 1st of November 2025. by 2/3 of the National Working Committee. That document was signed by 14 officers. This is a document, 14 officers. This document was served the National Electoral Commission, on the 4th of November. Thereafter, a suspended Anyanwu on the 3rd of November 2025 purported to suspend 14 people. 3 people sitting down to suspend 14 people that suspended them. Is that valid? Where is that rule? Where is that law? Where is that constitutional provision? So what we are talking about is that officers who were suspended took the party to court. Instead of taking the party to court to determine their suspension, they took the party to court, making themselves caretaker committee of the party. So the question for determination is, who appointed them? Who appointed them? Can you just appoint yourself? Take, for example, somebody says Senator Wabara is not BOT chairman, and Senator Onwamboa is BOT chairman. If Senator Onwamboa is BOT chairman, who signed that document making him BOT chairman? When was that document signed? The man who signed that document making him a BOT chairman is already a suspended officer of the party. And so it amounts to nullity. That's what we are saying. All this array of cases that we are doing is because some people who are not members of the party, who are suspended officers of the party, are prepared to inflict unnecessary punishment on a party that has made them what they are today.
And everybody, so these are issues of law, and it looks like everybody kind of so let's look at the facts available. The facts available is fact that the Ibadan Convention was nullified. We can all agree on that, right?
Yes, correct.
Yes.
Correct.
And you also said that the Court of Appeal upheld the suspension of Anyanwu and co, including Ajibade.
Oh, yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Now,
I can read it to you.
No, I'm going somewhere, sir. They said that suspension was not in perpetuity. It was a 30-day suspension that had an expiration date. So on that one, I would like you to speak to it, because just hold on. Because according to Honorable Minister Nyesom Wike, he said that when the Turaki group approached a federal high court in Ibadan to be joined in a suit that Turaki group had applied for recognition of their leadership after the convention, bringing INEC as the sole defendant, they applied to be joined in the suit. They were joined in that suit, and in being joined in that suit, when they filed their counter affidavit, their environment was not denied by the Turaki group, meaning they recognized that the acting committee subsists. So whatever decision was against the Turaki group indirectly favors the Abdurrahman leadership. If you get my drift.
Thank you very much. First, it was the Turaki group that filed the mandamus. The intendment was for the court to order the Independent National Electoral Commission to recognize them. The matter before the court was not about caretaker committee. It was about an order to direct the Independent National Commission to recognize the Turaki group arising from the Ibadan Convention, simply because there was also an Ibadan High Court that gave the PDP the go-ahead to organize that convention. Now, before that court, what the court ought to do was to say, we are granting your request or we are not granting it. Rather, the court went ahead. By the joinder from the Anyanwu group, the court went ahead to give a judgment that they are the recognized group. That was not the issue in contention. However, that matter has been appealed. That matter has been appealed. What we are saying is that a suspended officer who went to a federal high court, Anyanwu went to a federal high court, and the court held that the suspension was valid. Go back and deal with this matter with your party, because the party has a right to act the way they have acted. So in the beginning of this entire whole journey, where Anyanwu appointed himself and appointed others into a caretaker committee by self-appointment, cannot stand. And that is what the appeal court in this other matter said, and that is what the Supreme Court has also affirmed. Meanwhile, the Ibadan court you are referring to is at appeal level, and all these issues are being canvassed. All these issues have been canvassed.
Yes,
so
because
the judgment
I know that appeal
from that appeal, yes, from that appeal court, we still go the same way because the officers who are suspended, which is a valid suspension that has been held by both the appeal court and Supreme Court,
we can't predetermine the outcome of a court decision, so there is no prejudice.
No. I'm not predetermining it. What I'm telling you, no, you must get the point clear. You must get the point clear. What I'm saying is that as to suspension, the last appeal court judgment and the Supreme Court judgment has affirmed that. So the appeal court, all these issues will be brought before the appeal court because these are suspended officers.
Let's take the cases one after the other by its merits. Let's take the cases one after the other. The first one, without citing, let's just say the issue of Sule Lamido. And the issue of the members of the state chairman who went to court and got the judgment, which the Supreme Court stood on. The argument was the majority judgment of their Lord Justices was to the effect that was based on contempt of court, one of the major reasons. And then the dissenting judgment had to talk about jurisdiction. So it was a contest between contempt of court and jurisdiction. Well, eventually, we can say the decision of the Supreme Court is to the effect that that convention in Ibadan was nullified. That in some cases, should have given pay to the issue. But now, bringing this issue and the subsisting appeal court judgment and looking at what the Supreme Court has decided, who is really the leadership? Because you are saying it is Turaki that will hold the leadership in the interim basis because there is a vacuum. The Wike group is saying, no, there is no vacuum. So who do we believe? Is it that the decision of court these days is subject to multiple interpretation?
No, Geoffrey. You are talking about disobedience to court. That is why the Ibadan Convention was nullified. Because the Supreme Court and the appeal court said, see, if we allow this to fly, if we allow you to go, others will disobey judgments of the court. And so the punishment that the Ibadan Convention received is to the effect that a court judgment was not complied with. So there's no argument as to that. Now the other leg is that the cross appeal, which the Anyanwu group filed, is to the effect that the suspension of Ajibade, because the appeal court held that at the time Ajibade filed these cases and insisted that his own lawyers will stand to defend the PDP, he was already in suspension. So he couldn't have, carried out that function. He couldn't have carried out that.
So let me understand you, Mr. Agbedi.
Yes. Was held. Now, what we are saying, the clear situation is that Ibadan Convention annulled. Good. Nobody's arguing about that. So Turaki's convention, Turaki's chairmanship arising from the convention was declared null and void. Now, the other leg is that the cross appeal wanted to squash the suspension of these officers who converted themselves to caretaker committee.
I wasn't in court. I listened to Mr. Jugundu, who is their spokesperson.
I was in court.
He said that issue never came up in court. That's his argument.
Listen. This is a cross appeal they filed. Can you see me? This is the cross appeal
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Now let me tell you what they asked for. Okay? That we're in the Court of Appeal. Just a brief one. We're in the Court of Appeal, which is the lower court, raised and decided issue of the suspension of A.K. Ajibade SAN. Suspension of A.K. Ajibade SAN and his co-travelers. And then they went further in their summary to say that the purported suspension of the first respondent is an issue outside the litigation. The purported suspension raised so much by the lower court. And this was signed by Daudu SAN, Ukala SAN, Ume SAN,
So in clear terms, before we begin to wind down,
this was the cross.
In clear terms,
this is the cross appeal.
In clear terms, what your group
that was intended to squash the suspension was dismissed.
Yes, in clear terms, what your group is saying is that actions taken by suspended members is what cascaded all the way to them forming a national working committee. So, by your assessment, everything they did is null and void. Assessment. Now, let me tell you something that the ministers talked about. From what I've read, is to the fact that whatever action you take is going to be in violation of the law. In fact, that if you go and open a bank account, the bank is going to be in trouble. In fact, if you have a property, you may be in trouble as well in Abuja. How do you respond to that?
First of all, why is he worried about that? Why is he worried? How has that become his headache? How does that become a problem? When court of competent jurisdiction has adjudicated on the matter, why is he crying more than the bereaved? What makes him, as a minister of the Federal Republic, to now threaten banks and threaten people that, oh, if they use your property, I'm going to demolish it. Oh, okay, if they come to your bank, oh, I'm going to revoke the bank. Which means we have two presidents and two laws in this nation. It amounts to busybody. It has nothing to do with him. If they are vexed about the Supreme Court, they should go back to the court.
All right.
And not to threaten Nigerians, because he's holding a public office. And a public office holder must render service to people.
My director is on my neck. Just 30 seconds. Will there be an end in sight between the two groups and the time we have for organizing the party to have an election? In 30 seconds.
I can tell you that it has ended.
Oh, really?
That PDP is on our way to the general elections in 2027. And the interim National Executive Committee is working to put PDP back on track with the BOT and NEC that ratified the decision of BOT. Thank you.
Honorable Agbedi, the issue of PDP and some of these other parties is a lot to chew. Literally, I'm almost tempted to ask their judexes, their Lord Justice, maybe you have to write in clear terms. This group, you're no longer in charge. This group, you are now in charge. I don't know whether we have to get to that point, because subjective interpretation of court decisions is really turning the polity upside down.
No, Geoffrey, it is very clear.
All right.
When two appeals come before judges and they dismiss the two appeals, it means that we both lost the case. That is what
Honorable Fred Agbedi is a member representing
we are not saying that.
We're totally out of time. My apologies.
That the Badon Convention should subsist. We are not saying so.
Fred Agbedi is the member representing. My apologies, sir. My apologies. Totally out of time. My apologies, sir. Fred Agbedi is the member representing Sagbama Ekeremo Federal Constituency in the House of Reps and caucus chairman of the PDP. Thank you.
Thank you. Great pleasure.
As always, we'll bring you up to speed what's playing out in the polity and in politics. Thank you for your time and company. I'm Jeffrey Uzama. Good night.